Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, at 38, childless, I met a woman with 2 daughters. Despite her struggles, she impressed me with her intellect and determination. When her behavior turned erratic due to grief, I encouraged her to seek help. Eventually, I discovered her drug use and infidelity. I confronted her, leading to her leaving my home and eventual arrest on drug charges. Now let's get into the story. At the age of 38, I still didn't have any children of my own. I was waiting until I knew I had the right woman and it was the right time. That's when I met my girlfriend for 2 short years. She was 34 and had 2 daughters from a failed marriage. She seemed like a woman who was reeled into a long-term relationship with a bad man. Due to an unexpected pregnancy and her mother's poor advice, I decided to continue seeing her. And the more we got to talk, the more I fell for her. She was incredibly smart and loved history. She read out loud to her kids every night and was going to school online to earn her teaching degree. Even though life threw her curveballs, she was trying hard, which was what I respected most about her. Things changed after her sister passed away unexpectedly. My girlfriend became overwhelmed with grief. She felt like she could die at any minute and found it disturbing that all humans ever do is waste time until they inevitably die. She started talking more about the end of the world and clicked on any YouTube videos that mentioned potential war or weapon launches. At night before bed, she started saying she hoped I wouldn't die before her because she wouldn't be able to handle it. She developed this fear of blood clots forming in her arms, legs, or neck, so she would jump up several times while we watched a movie or relax just to march in place and move her arms around. I realized she had a problem, so I asked her if she'd be willing to seek treatment. She didn't want to go to counseling, but she did believe in God, so I suggested she ask the church for help of some kind. My girlfriend was skeptical she could handle any other weekly activity besides raising the children and doing online classes. I assured her I would watch her kids on the night she went to the church if they could make her feel better about life. She took my offer and told me they assigned her a weekly arts and crafts class to teach small children. She was really excited about it, and things started to get better immediately. She seemed more calm, and things stopped stressing her out as much. A few weeks later, though, something changed. Again, she was calm, but also less observant and sharp. Things that normally wouldn't have confused her suddenly did. She laughed out loud more often. She stopped marching in place, but would go outside randomly to walk around the house a few times. It took me a month before I went outside. While she was walking to watch her, I saw her take a puff from a vape pen. She coughed a little. I immediately thought it was a medical vape cartridge, which wasn't legal in our state. I walked up to her and asked how she was smoking one of these. She was hesitant to say anything and tried to show me it wasn't what I thought it was, but in doing so, I discovered it was. I made a confident guess that each time she stepped outside was to vape without me knowing. She admitted it wasn't just for that, but she enjoyed the walking too. I asked how she was getting these cartridges, and she didn't want to tell me. She said it was no concern of mine, and I should just let her continue what she's doing because she feels better now. I took this time to mention that we hadn't made love in quite some time, so I was worried that she was getting love from someone else, and that maybe this person was also giving her cartridges. Her jaw dropped and she denied this, but I could tell instantly that I guessed what was happening. She wouldn't admit it, though. And why wouldn't she? If she refused to admit it, she might get to keep living in my house with me serving as her free babysitter. I forgot to mention she was desperate for a place to live when we met, so I let her move in with me pretty fast. Now I felt like a fool because she was up to something. I ordered a GPS tracker to put on her car the next time she said she was going to her class. I anxiously watched her location on my phone. I was infuriated at this point, sure that she was taking advantage of me. I watched until she arrived at the crappy motel across from the cemetery. I asked her mom to come watch the kids and told her what was going on. She was surprised and didn't want to believe me, but she did come watch the kids. I got to the hotel and started filming on my phone. I banged on the door in front of her car and heard a scramble inside. When AP opened the door, he only had a towel around his waist and could see my wife's eyes peeking out from behind the bed. I told her I could see her and felt my heart twist like a pretzel. I asked if this was the guy she got her cartridges from, and he said it was none of my business. I snapped, screaming in his face that it was most certainly my business. AP just put his hands up and told my wife it was time to go home to Daddy outside. She told me she only lied to protect me and the kids because she didn't trust this guy. There were so many things wrong with that statement. I pointed out that she was a complete idiot for meeting this guy alone in a hotel room if she didn't trust him. Secondly, I said she didn't need to protect us from that guy. She just didn't want me to know she was sleeping with him in exchange for illegal drugs all taking place while I watched her kids if she could go to the church. I screamed that she was just using me for a place to live. But I knew now that she was a horrible mistake. I didn't love her because she just proved she didn't love or respect me. She was selling herself for drugs. I left her there in the motel parking lot. I didn't care if she followed me, but she did. She heard me telling her mom and kids to get the flip out of my house when they yelled in protest. I called her a lying cheater, among other truthful insults. Eventually, they got the gist and started packing their cars with children and stuff. While they did so, my girlfriend tried telling her mom I didn't want them to live in my house anymore because I was selfish and evil. I disproved that by showing her mother the video I took. Her mother was furious and told her daughter I should leave her after the extreme dishonesty and betrayal. It was just a short while later, while they were all living at her mom's house, that my ex was arrested on drug charges. Today's second story. In this story, Opie, a dedicated cosplayer, recounts his experience with his wife at a convention where she disappears multiple times, raising suspicions of infidelity. He discovers incriminating messages on her phone and publicly confronts her, leading to their separation. Feeling betrayed and disgusted, he leaves her behind in another state. She struggles afterward, relying on a man for support, but he eventually rejects her. Despite her attempts to reconcile, he cuts ties completely, selling her belongings and refusing to engage with her emotional pleas. Now let's get into the story. I've been a cosplayer since I was 14. My wife and I dated for years before we got married and stayed together for 10. At the time of this story, I was 31 and she was 33. Even though she was never as passionate about cosplaying as me, she would go with me. I could tell she was losing enthusiasm for it even more, but she still came with me dressed as her favorite Star Wars character while I was geeking out with my friends. She must have decided she was too mature for all this and left. I noticed she was gone, but I trusted her. Assuming she went to the bathroom, she came back hours later. By this time, I had been casually looking for her for 2 hours. Maybe I trusted her too much, or maybe I was having too much fun. When she showed up, she was really happy but squirmish. She was holding her phone in her hand and said she just went for a walk for a while and found a small-time bookshop that she couldn't resist. She was reading all that time before coming back to me. I asked if she bought a book and she said no, looking pretty stupid. She started texting a little more often than normal, but she said it was her older sister catching up with her. She was pretty bubbly and texting off and on. It didn't seem like anything was wrong, but she also didn't seem interested in me or what we were doing. She took selfies with me and did what I wanted, but her heart wasn't in it. After dinner, we went to see a movie. We sat beside each other for the first 30 minutes, then she had to go to the bathroom. She made sure to mention her stomach hurt, so I didn't expect her to come back very fast. Well, at nearly the end of the movie, I wandered out and yelled into the women's bathroom. No one responded to me. I started calling her over and over again while I went back to the hotel and found that she wasn't there either. I went to the convention feeling exhausted and wondering what she was doing there. She ran into me. She said I wasn't at the hotel. Before I even tried to respond to that, I noticed she wasn't wearing lipstick. Contrary to how I saw her at the movies, it looked like she washed it off because there was nothing left. I smelled her slightly damp hair, and it smelled like lemons, not like the shampoo in our hotel or the one we brought. I added all the odd disappearances, odd texting, odd smells, odd appearance, odd giddiness, and wondered if she was cheating on me. Of course, I was going to have to check her phone and confront her about it, but before I said anything, her phone started ringing. She was already holding it in her hand, so in the moment she was registering who it was, I grabbed it from her. I answered the call and asked who it was. My male voice must have scared him off because he hung up. I tried calling back and got the voicemail of a deep-voiced, professional-sounding AP. I scrolled through their messages and found the arrangements they made for my wife to come over. They also talked about his stock marketing skills, and in the most recent message, AP confesses how quickly he's falling for her and how magical her body is. She was holding her face, ordering me to give her back her phone. Out of all the things she should have been saying, it was that I yelled, "You cheated on me," loud enough for the costume people around us to hear. They were already invested. Having seen a circle around the convention a few times, they started booing her as I held up her phone with messages on the screen. I turned to walk out, but she followed me back at the hotel. She admitted she was just bored and felt like she was too mature to keep cosplaying every year. She quickly added that she realized now it was a huge mistake and she loved me for who I was. I looked her straight in the eyes and said she made me sick. As I packed, I told her I'd have to be a mormon to stay married to her now, and she should have just talked out the differences with me before she spread her legs for a more interesting or more mature man now. Much too late to apologize, and I don't care about her at all. She's worth nothing or negative value if that's possible. She's like a black hole. Her level of putridness would affect anyone who gets close enough to her. I told her I would never care about what happened to her and shoved my bags in the car. I left her there in a different state, but she didn't have any living relatives to come to her rescue. She didn't even have very close friends, so she stayed where I left her. She tried to go to AP, and he entertained her for a while, making her feel like everything was going to be okay. She was needy, barely had any money, and depended on him to take care of her. All of a sudden, it was like adopting a child with no intentions of improving her situation beyond that. Funny thing is, she once accused me of being like a child, but I worked full-time. After he kicked her out, she started calling me every day to cry and leave me long, pitiful voicemails. When she finally came back to the state we were living in, she didn't attend any of our court hearings, and I sold anything she had in her home. After 10 years of marriage, her voicemails were pathetic, and she wouldn't stop because I was the only person she knew so well. She was in a world of strangers. Now it's up to her to find what she needs. I used to be her provider and caregiver like a good husband, but it wasn't good enough.